that's the de-risking all of the technology components of Vera Rubin was just a massive undertaking. And so now we've de-risked, now everything's proven to work. Everything is in volume production. I'm just so incredibly proud of the team. I mean, we just look at all the chips, not just our chips, but other people's chips that have to work with our chips. You know, it's a miracle. But the problem is, if you don't do that, then we literally have 1.5x more transistors and call it 1.7x more transistors. Who cares? Are you guys following me? You're not gonna rack up a whole new AI factory for $50 billion for 1.5x. You're just not gonna do it. The bar is too high now. Just you gotta imagine that person. It's not about 50% better camera. Sure, I'll pay for that. You know, it's 50% better AI factory. You're not gonna pay for that. Does that make sense? It's $50 billion. You're not gonna do it for 50%. You'll do it for 10x. You'll write a check for 10x, but you're not going to write a check for 50%, which is the challenge because, as all of you have heard me say, Moore's Law is over. Moore's Law is completely over. If every single year we're getting 50%, you know, and AI is going to, we're not getting 50%, but every single year we're getting probably something like 20, 15, 25% tops out of transistors these days. But AI is going 10x per year, 25x per year. There's no way to keep up. And so we have to do something like extreme co-design and really basically revolutionize everything. Thank you. Srini Pajuri from RBC Capital Markets. We're going to ramp Vera Rubin pretty fast. This is easier to ramp than this. This is literally what all of the world's computer companies are building right now. Just enormous workforces, enormous factory floors building this tray. This compute tray is the limiter of the world's AI factories today. This is what everybody's building. Look at the number of connectors and so we realized the labor content that went into this, and then you know, once you get here, literally this was 2 hours. You could just watch it. It takes 2 hours. Assembly of people's like operating rooms standing around this thing, you know, building it like a car. And you're happy to build this like a car because, of course, the economics is better than a car. Right? This is a full car. Okay? And so you're happy to build it like a car, but you'd rather build this. And the reliability is going to be better. You know, it's called RAS, reliability, availability, serviceability. The one thing I didn't say today, I should remember. So NVLink, this generation, Vera Rubin, you can the world's first networking system is hot swappable. You take part of the network, you pull it out, and you can service the rest of it while it's still running. Update the software while it's running. It's craziness. So the goal is just to keep that entire AI factory running all the time. Does that make sense? You just paid $50 billion for it. You don't want the concept of downtime, you would go insane. And so just the amount of technology and innovation from all the learnings and working with everybody that went into Vera Rubin, all the things that I did say, it's a miracle. Yeah, and so we're going to try to ramp it as much as we can. The second half, we should sell out. I guess my question is more about the longer term. How do you see the frontier model market shaking out? The last 25 years, there's always been one of the things. We still have a lot of frontier models, and that's fairly fragmented market. At least from my usage point, they all seem pretty similar to me. So I'm just curious as to hear your thoughts about how do you see the market shaking out? And you think AI is so different that you need so many project models going forward? If it's going to be shaken out, what do you think will cause it? Yeah, good question. As soon as like for example, if everybody I work with is smarter than I am, they're all smart enough. Are you guys following? If all the AIs are smarter than we are, then they're good enough. And so that's what you're feeling. You're feeling the good enough. For general use, But for domain-specific use, they're hardly good enough. And that's where, I think you're going to see a fair amount of breakthrough this year in vertical agentic systems. Because I think it's not easy to just boil the ocean and make every AI be great at, on the one hand, chemistry and moving and biology, also, drive a car and do it effectively and efficiently. I don't think you can reasonably do that. I'm fairly good understanding of technology. The technology is related, but optimizing for all these different domains and specialization, workflow, data training, even people evaluating it is very good. And so I think long before I'm worried about the foundation model industry, I think verticalization is clearly happening. Are the verticalization going to happen outside the foundation model companies or inside the foundation model? That's a different question. However, in many of the companies that you're thinking about, remember, they already have verticals. Meta already has very deep verticals in visual marketing, AI, ad serving. So they have a lot of good verticals that they're very, very good at. And it's not likely that they need to, it's not likely they have to, give up that model creation to somebody else because that vertical is too important to them and they own the channel, they own all the expertise. So you could say the same with Google, and you could say the same with X. You could say, does that make sense? I mean, there's several different companies where their go-to-market is so good because they're already domain experts in those verticals. I think that flywheel is going to continue to sustain. In the case of OpenAI, they are the Google of our time. And I use all of the AI models, but I kind of, for some reason, always go back to ChatGPT. Kind of always go back to Google. And so I think they've become that, and so that's a great outlet for them, the consumer outlet. In the case of Anthropic, their enterprise capability is really, really good. And so maybe that's their angle. I think that ultimately each one of these model makers have to find an outlet, a channel that's very, very significantly secure. And otherwise, for everybody else, it's going to be open models. I just mentioned 5 of them that actually are fairly secure. But for everybody else, I think open models is likely to be the answer. And they're at the frontier. They're not the frontier, but they're at the frontier. Leading the ones behind. And we'll keep everybody there. And companies like Lilly and companies like ServiceNow, and they can take it and create their own version of AI. The ServiceNow my sense is that that's likely to happen. Over here. So congratulations on Mercedes launching after 8 years of autonomous vehicles driving finally getting now. Can you give us some thoughts about where the industry is for agentic and physical? You talked about last year, you talked about this year, and there is a lot of examples, but do you think we're going to see critical mass volume in 2026 from these areas, maybe from an inference standpoint and deployments? If not for agentic AI, there would be no cursor. Cursor is agentic. If not for agentic AI, there's no open evidence. It's an agentic system. Almost all of the best AI native companies that you know are agentic AI companies. But we call them agentic AI today because we're trying to say that it's different than one shot for models that don't use tools. In the future, that's just called an AI application. There's no question in my mind now. This framework of AI systems is likely going to be the basic framework for doing applications in the future. So instead of off-the-shelf libraries, you're going to have off-the-shelf models, off-the-shelf agentic systems. They're just going to plug them together. You can tell them what the goals are. They're trying to put together. And so getting applications deployed and working together is going to be just easier and easier and easier. And so the technology is hard, but using it should be easier. today the technology is hard and using it is hard. And that's the reason for that is because the technology is not good enough. But as you see, that in the last 2 years, the AI technologies have gotten so good that using ChatGPT for research and solving a lot of questions has become so much easier. This is going to be the same with AI applications. They're all going to become agentic. Alpamayo is an agentic AV. It's agentic in the sense that it looks at the world and it goes, I've never seen this circumstance before. What's going on? It breaks the problem down into things that are fairly routine. Because I know that, I can, based on that, this is what I would recommend not to do. And so it's a reasoning system, and it's using common sense, physical common sense that we taught it. And if you ask it to take you something, it's called a VLA.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning, Miss Allison.
It's a full
Dios la bendiga.
So you could just tell the car to take you somewhere. If the car is about to do something and you're not sure, why are you doing that? The car will just talk back to you. And so it's a full agentic system. Because there are 5 a.m. flights in your area, there are drivers in your area. Fight outdoor grime with the Power Clean More. 2 times the cleaning power. Scrub less, clean more. Case closed.
There's a reason Arctic natives just call cold plunges plunges.
It's a blanket.
Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. Morgan & Morgan, for the people.com.
There are a couple things that drive me. So, the first thing that drives me, and if you know my story, don't say
Current owners must visit an eligible vehicle for this exceptional lease offer on this 2026 Cadillac Optic.
We're excited to deepen our relationship with game creators around the world and help them reach new audiences and learn from each other.
At Xbox, we're just incredibly lucky to work with so many creative teams across the industry.
So, Joe Moore from Morgan Stanley. I wonder, you could talk about how to think about sizing the physical AI market. It seems intuitive that this is a very difficult problem to solve because there's simulation, there's a lot of dollars that needs to be spent. But when you did this with large language models, you had cloud CapEx budgets that just towards you in the early stages. For physical AI, we need to see companies raising money. There's going to be automotive, industrial companies. Just how do we think about what's going to fund what seems like a pretty big project?
Physical AI has the benefit of riding on the shoulders of the large language model. And it's called multimodality, number one. It's able to understand vision and language at the same time. It's multimodality. It's aligned. Meaning that, let me see if I can give you an example. So in your brain, I'm pretty certain that this is true. CAT, those 3 words, meow, and the picture of a cat. To you, it's exactly aligned in the same place in your brain. It's aligned. Over the years, we've aligned its multimodality alignment, and so you have to use this concept called cross attention, and you're learning 2 things at one time, and then your vector space it becomes same, okay, or in the same geography. And so we have the benefit of large language models that were already trained. And so we take essentially Neurotron, and then we take something that is trained very specifically on vision and world models, which uses a lot less data. In combination, we created Cosmos. So Cosmos still took tens of thousands of GPUs several years.
Sleepy.
But it's less. But now that we have Cosmos, we'll give Cosmos away.
Say sleep, sleep, mind. Say sleep, sleep, mind. Say I'm dinosaur mind. Say I'm dinosaur mind. Say I'm dinosaur mind. Say I'm dinosaur mind. Say dinosaur mind. I'm dinosaur mind. Say it. Are you Ian Bob or dinosaur mind?
Not all of it, but like a third. And now they can take this.
Jensen, thanks a lot for doing this. Glenn, thanks a lot for doing this. Doug Barua with Loop Capital. A NeoCloud question.
Checking on the status.
We'd love to get
Status is
you
nail the
how
nut,
big picture
destroy,
of cloud and Google Cloud
destroyed.
in
They didn't even
space.
mess with the corner.
Structurally, NVIDIA has
Destroyed.
continued to deepen its
Why would you guys
partnerships
leave
with
these little
NeoCloud.
two little
At this
pieces?
point, the core customer bases, from the AI labs to the hyperscalers, sovereign, and now even enterprise, are moving closer to embracing the neo clouds. So we'd love to get your take on where you see them playing big picture, and then just as a quick part, to the extent that
Yeah,
enterprise
tell them come on down.
and sovereign adopt neo clouds, that helps
Because I am pursuing my
NVIDIA
dreams every
sell
single
their
day,
enterprise OS.
and so should you.
We believe
I love you, bye.
in the existence of this category because the technology is still changing fairly fast. When we started cultivating what people call neo clouds, or at the time they were just called GPU clouds because that's all they had in the cloud. We started cultivating them and partnering with them because we realized that the AI technology was moving fairly quickly, and we knew that our technology was going to move fairly quickly. So the market was moving quickly, the technology was moving quickly, and the access to land, power, and shell was also not something we could take for granted. And so, in this combination of circumstances, we felt that a community of fast-moving, agile, regional players would likely be quite successful. We were right. And so, Nscale is a European region. We have Yoda in India. They're a regional player. And of course, there's CoreWeave that we know about, right? And Lambda that people know about. And so we have all these different regional players. Humane in the Middle East. And so there's a lot of different regions. My sense is that you're going to find more. And each one of these geographies are going to build up their AI infrastructure. And that AI infrastructure and community is going to have to include everything from researchers and startups, and isn't that right? And large companies. And oftentimes being where your customer is makes a difference. And so that's the reason why we did it. And now it's given us a network outlet to the marketplace and partners who are constantly seeking out land, power, and shell opportunities. Speaking back to the power challenges, but customers, and partners who are trying to build this ecosystem with us. And so,
What is this?
Thank you. It's Chris Castro from Wolf Research. The question is about margins and really sustainability of margins at these high levels. It's one of the most frequent questions I get from investors. I know you've answered the question for this year, staying in the mid-70s. But two questions on that. One is, what's different with the Rubin ramp that allows you to maintain those margins? You don't use the ramp because typically margins will go down. And then longer term. How does NVIDIA continue to price to value?
Because I am pursuing my dreams every single day, and so should you.
I think that
Yo lo bendiga.
Oh shit, that's who you were, baby.
So for-
Damn.
Ahí para
plus or minus 0.5%. That's kind of obviously hard to predict. Nor I think is that your question. In the long term, our margins are
So dreams come true.
are exactly directly related to the value that we deliver.
So I see
And I
something
simplify the world of value creation down to basically 3 charts. And those 3 charts are insanely hard to get done right. The first one is how many GPUs does it take for you to train a model, a reasonable sized model in the time that you need to train it? You know, and so you've got to get to market every year, and you need to iterate on that model several times. And you like not to win the front, you like not to lose the frontier. And so your training capability matters a lot. And that's not just a flops thing, you know, because the shape of that curve that I showed you is directly related to code design. It's got networking problems, it's got memory bandwidth problems, it's got NV loop problems, it's got software problems, it's got every problem. The shape of that curve, otherwise it would just be, have you noticed I'm the only CEO that showed you guys shape curves instead of just a bar? Do you guys know the bar? You just pick a point. You know? It's like, that's not life. Life is not like a bar, you know? And so life is this, and I can't show you the multi-dimensional curves that we have, and we call them frontier Paretos, Pareto frontiers, and we sweep across a multi-dimensional space, and that's the simplest version that I think is the one that makes sense most to deliver value. And so there's the training side of it, there's the inference side of it, and then there's throughput side of it. The inference side of it has to do with the cost it takes to generate the tokens. Given the latency, the quality of service requirements of that time, people are expecting more and more tokens generated, which means that the token rate has to be much shorter, and yet you need to deliver it much more cost effectively. That multi-dimensional problem was described in that chart. And then the next one is, in the final analysis, if you're going to build your infrastructure this year, you better be darn sure that your revenues will go up next year. And you've got only 3 gigawatts or 2 gigawatts or 1 gigawatt. That's it. So within your 1 gigawatt, your perf per dollar, your perf per watt, that last chart that I showed, is the second or third, that chart is insanely hard. That's not a bar, because the workload differs across all these different scenarios. And so your job is to one, support your research team to get to frontier. 2, once you have a model, you better make money at it, because otherwise, you know, it has to generate tokens fast enough for a good quality of service. And then 3, the entire data center has to generate enough revenues that the capex you put down next year is going to cause your company to grow, not shrink. And so these are such complicated issues. And I distilled it into one chart, but there's mounds of simulators behind it. And to the extent that we can continue to do that, at the levels that we're doing that, it's easy to go 1.5x. I take that back. That's not even that easy. Okay? If you build a chip that's 1.5x more transistors, you put it into that supercomputer, you don't get 1.5x, you'll get 1.2x because of Amdahl's. And so you have to do extreme engineering, extreme code design across all of this and invent things like NVFP4 to bust out of Moore's Law. Are you guys following me? Otherwise, you're like everybody else. And so that's the challenge. I think our ability to sustain value, which is deliver the value across the dimensions that I've said, is fairly, you know, I wouldn't say it's singular, but I would say it's fairly close to singular. And we're doing it at this scale, and it's getting harder every time. As you know, it obviously gets harder every time. And so I think so those are dimensions. You take the performance. In the end, it's about that 1 gigawatt data center. That's the simple math. It's $50 billion. Does your $50 billion deliver more revenues than somebody else? Do you deliver more tokens than somebody else? Okay, it's $50 billion. If somebody else is willing to do it for 40, because 20 of it is just land, power, and shell, isn't that right? chips are free, it's still 20. If everything was free, it was still 20. Are you guys following me? Okay? And so you better be sure that whatever you put on top of that 20, you're going to be happy with. And so that's why I think the difference between, good margins and poor margins is such a small difference across that 50 billion. So long as we continue to deliver the throughput, I hope that customers will continue to reward us. But that's our basic strategy. And then today I spoke about the new dimensions of that data center, which is we really want to invest in making sure that the resilience, availability, reliability, availability, and serviceability of the data center is world class. And that's very, very hard as well.
So just following up on the previous question on the AI models, what do you think might be the game changer for the current competitive landscape? Because since now it seems we are in a oligopoly where 3 to 5 big players dominate the market in different verticals. But any game changer in the next several years, and what would that be? And my second question is, since the AI token is growing 5 times year over year, and when would that to re-accelerate or slow down, and what would be the catalyst for the change? And my final question, that what's the next milestone for both AI and NVIDIA that you are looking for, that you are super excited about?
If I told you the last one, you're not going to come to the next one. Some of the big breakthroughs that are still right around the corner. How to deal with memory is a big deal. And today context lengths could be 100,000, it could be 1 million. But clearly the right context length is infinite. And so how do you deal with infinite context length where you have to do attention across all of that? So there's some good research that needs to be done there. We're playing with a lot of research in this area ourselves. That's why our model is hybrid. State space models, the SSMs, are highly efficient at compressing context and versus transformers. And so we created a hybrid version. And so Nemotron 3 was very efficient at context processing and token generation. I think there's a lot of research in this direction. Still, I think the some of it is related to the system architecture, as I mentioned today, BlueField 4, to bring memory closer. It's kind of like your long-term memory doesn't sit in your head. It sits on the network somewhere. We just took your long-term memory and we put it in your brain. Okay? So put BlueField 4 in the same rack. And so we're going to put your long-term memory in your brain. I think it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of continuous learning type of things, which is you come up to a circumstance you don't know before, you reason about it, you still don't know how to solve it. Maybe it's a domain you just don't even have first principle knowledge until you break it down. And so you might know that you don't know it, but to know that you don't know something, and to go study, go do research, so that you have some first principle knowledge of something, and then you come back and you reason about it. So it's kind of almost like the AI question problem, and it doesn't know the answer at all, but it's okay. Behind your back, they want to do some research, and you go, I know it. Now it can reason about the question. Does that make sense? And so continuous learning doesn't have to, I think there's a fair amount of research opportunity. And your second question, what's going to be the inflection, the next inflection of token rate generation? The 5x came about because of reasoning. I'm feeling that we are 50x in front of us. And the 50x in front of us is because of agentic systems. The reasoning is going to come with it. Tool use, planning and simulation. It's almost like AlphaGo in real time. You know? And so I think that's probably these agentic systems is likely to cost tokens way. The demand for computing is really high right now, as you guys know. Because of the three scaling blocks, reasoning and agentic systems is putting enormous amounts of pressure, multimodality, larger models, is putting enormous amount of pressure on the trading systems. On the inference systems, because of model thinking, putting enormous amount of pressure. And then also agentic systems comes along, putting enormous amount of pressure on them. And then because these models are now so useful, the number of AI startups is going through the roof. You look at the number of AI startups from 2025 versus the year before, it almost doubled. And the amount of money they raised, most of it is going to go towards computing, right? So the amount of burden on the pressure on the computing companies is really, that's why our customer demand so high.
Talked about extreme code design quite a bit. And the stats are staggering, right? The Spectrum X run rate, getting 400 gig surgeries. What does that say about R&D intensity going forward? And are you seeing tangible benefits today from the things you're doing with either the mediating companies or your R&D?
They don't got it. No, I put it in la cosita ahí en la silla. Ask Miss Allison to see if she moved it.
Relative to getting and accelerating design process.
If you look at all of our investments, you could see us investing at almost every layer of the stack. Land, power shell, chips, infrastructure, models, and applications. We either invest in it directly, meaning we're building it, like for example, NVIDIA's open models. We're one of the largest model builders in the world. We just don't ever talk about it. And now we're getting so much attention in this area, positive attention in this area. You know, you'll hear us talking about it more. And it also explains why NVIDIA's cloud spend is so high. Because we're building the world's leading models for open science and, you know, all these open markets. And so, but that creates such an incredible flywheel for our architecture. It's one of the best investments we have. And so you see us invest across that entire stack that way. You then see us invest across the industry. Like for example, we invest from digital biology to agentic systems, all the way to robotics and autonomous vehicles. You know, and so we'll invest across the industries, and then we'll invest across the dimension up and down the supply chain. So when you see us invest, and I conflate R&D budget with invest, because to me it's the same. You know, it's improper that most people split the two. It actually, investment is investment. What difference does it make? You're investing internally or externally to enhance your company's market position. Isn't that right? That's a fundamental goal. That's what all of you would like you to do. And so I see this large investment portfolio in this larger universe in that symbol. Where we could do something very unique with it, we'll likely do it internally and bulk it up. Like for example, NVLink is clearly revolutionary, and we're singularly the only company in the world with it today. The first version of it is likely going to be scale out Ethernet, called scale up Ethernet, and it'll work out the same way. But here it's such an incredible Roshan and the team were always thinking about scale up, and they just described it in different ways. And their market traction was difficult because it's hard to build a company that does scale up. The compute and the fabric are highly integrated. The software stack is completely integrated, and so it's hard to disentangle them into different companies. Some of the things that I'm thinking about with Grok, it's hard to be disentangled. There's a lot of innovation and invention that has to happen, at the two teams level. And so there again, I think the teams ought to just join us in that particular case. But to the extent that we can invest outside, I prefer that. I prefer to keep NVIDIA as small as possible, as large as necessary. And if you look at our company today, we're 40,000 people. We're probably one of the leanest fighting machines on the planet, and yet our ecosystem is really sprawling. And that's the size, that's the mental model of the company of the future. And so I think that the level of R&D spend of our company is quite sustainable.
So one question I would follow up on from, I was wondering if there's any software technology that you can leverage across the different portfolio.
No doubt, because the programming model of the Grok chips are very different than the programming models of our chips, which is the reason why they're extremely low latency and we're extremely high throughput. Some of the things that I'm thinking about doing, would rely on the reshaping of some of that stuff. But we're just really at the beginning part of it. We have plenty of time to do this. And if we succeed in doing it, it'd just be yet another dimension of capability we can bring to the world's AI factories. I think the vast majority would still just be things like Grace Blackwell and just be, call it 90%. But maybe in the future, 10% of it is an extreme version of something. It's kind of like it's okay to build a mid-engine and a SUV. It's okay. It's still both Ferraris, right? And so I think what NVIDIA does is not build GPUs. What NVIDIA does is build AI infrastructure. Are you guys following me? I barely showed you a GPU today. I stood in front of a pod, And so our goal is to build AI infrastructure that is insanely amazing, not just for 80% of the world, but the 87%, but hopefully for 100% of the world.
Do you think there are most for the TV of the use cases you didn't know that? No, Bubba. My uncle asked me. I don't know where it is. I always put it right there in the main couch. Always there.
Thank you for taking my question. So it's a question about market technology. So actually, you currently already have CPX technology through the acquisition of Grok. You also can have the access to SRAM that can be used in inferencing. So actually, your team also published a paper some months ago about how to use CPX in field, and then so as to reduce the usage of HBM. You can use GPU and GPU out standard instead of HBM, and we all know that HBM is very expensive. So going forward, so because of the combination of your in-house CPX technology, so how would you see the usage of HBM can be more under control so as to be more positive to your margin? Thanks.
Sure. So I can describe. I'll describe the benefits of each one of these things, and then I'll describe the challenge. Okay, why it's not so obvious. For example, CPX does prefill per dollar better than like for example Rubin CPX versus just Rubin. It does prefill per dollar better. So it's prefill, per dollar is higher than Vera Rubin normally. And if I keep everything on SRAM, then of course I don't need HBM memory, but the problem is then the size of my model that I can keep inside these SRAMs is like 100 times smaller. Okay. However, for some workloads, it could be insanely fast because SRAM's a lot faster than going off to even HBM memories. Okay. And so I think you could kind of see the benefits in pre-fill and decode. The problem is workloads are changing shape all the time, and sometimes you have MOE, sometimes you have multimodality stuff, sometimes you got diffusion models, right? And so sometimes you get autoregressive models, sometimes you have SSMs. These models are all slightly different in shape and size, and sometimes they move the pressure on the MD link, sometimes they move the pressure on the HBM memory, sometimes they move the pressure on all three. And so my point is because the workloads are changing so fast and because the world is innovating so fast, that's one of the reasons why NVIDIA is just universally the right answer, because we're flexible. Does that make sense? If your workload is changing from morning to night, depending on what customer you have, we're versatile. We're good at almost everything, And you might be able to take one particular workload and push it to the extreme, but that 10% of the workload, or even 5% of the workload, or 12% of the workload, if it's not being used, then all of a sudden that part of the data center could be used for something else for 90% of the workload, and you deprived it.
Try Airwick plugins and fragrances for the best value per day, and now with up to 70 days of scent for refill.
Did you hear about Shield, a test for colon cancer? No, what? It's just a blood test. No. Exactly.
Shield is for people 45 plus at average risk, not high risk for colon cancer. Ask your doctor about FDA approved Shield.
Because you only have 1 gigawatt. The trick is to think through that one data center, not as infinite money and infinite space, but you have finite power. And so you have to utilize that finite power for the overall consumption of the data center. And the more flexible it is, the better it is. The more unified architecture it is. Like, for example, if we updated a new DeepSeek model and every single GPU in the data center, all of a sudden, every one of the performance go up. I updated the library for a Q1 model, and the whole data center go up. I do it for. Does that make sense? But if you have 17 different architectures, one's good for this thing, one's good for that thing, then as it turns out, the overall TCO is not as good. So that's the challenge. And even when I'm building these things, I know what the challenge is. It's very hard. I'm exploring ways to beat myself all the time, and it's hard. We're exploring all kinds of different chips to try to build a better solution than even the one we have. It is extremely hard. But the exercise is worth it, isn't that right? If I'm constantly trying to come up with a new way to even do better than what I currently have, if I'm doing that myself, then I'm exploring all of the nooks and crannies. I'm trying to disrupt myself all the time. And so I think that at the moment, CPX is exactly as you say, but it also reduces the flexibility of the data center. And I think with that, let's see, what should I tell you guys? One, demand is really high. If I didn't say that earlier, demand is really high. Two, Grace Blackwell, GB300, the transition has been wonderful, and everybody's building it out. Vera Rubin, next generation is here. Another giant step up. Couldn't have been possible without co-design. Took us all these different chips to make it possible. Second half of this year, we'll start shipping, and next year we'll be there over here, shipping at scale. In the meantime, I think that you should know that the AI community is doing really, really good work. ChatGPT was followed on by O1, which is completely revolutionary, which triggered reasoning models of all kinds. Open models is now the second largest model in the world. That's probably the best way to think about it. And our company has been doing this for some time, but we are a giant model builder as well. We build models and software that we share with the entire community. And this year, agentic AI is really influence. Have a great year. Chat, voice for you. I don't know where I left it, but I will find it. All right, you guys. Happy New Year.
Finance the old way. Finance the round way.
This is for certain. Everybody's jobs will change as a result. Some jobs will be going down. Obviously, every single industrial revolution, some jobs will be gone. And but a whole bunch of new jobs are created. Everybody will have to use it. Because if you don't use it, you lose the job to somebody else. Time has named the architects of AI as the 2025 Person of the Year. One of those architects is Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, which is now a very valuable company. NVIDIA has a near monopoly on the supply of GPUs. The advanced computer chips powering the AI boom has transformed the planet. The industry's rapid growth has tech leaders declaring a new era of abundance. Skeptic, financial model. In November, I went to speak with Huang at NVIDIA's Bay Area offices. Google CEO announced 5 studies this week that there were elements of irrationality around AI right now. There's always some irrationality somewhere. I think that's a fair thing to say. I would say the part that most people miss is that underneath the foundation of chatbots and agentic AI is a transformation in viewing journalists. When you then gauge the investments incremental on top of that relative to the opportunity of generative AI, agentic AI, AGI on top of that, then you'll come to the conclusion, in fact, it's very modest. It's still significant, but it's modest relative to the overall market.
So you're somewhere between $4 and $5 trillion company right now. A lot of that cash flow that you're bringing in as revenue, you're investing in other companies in the space. Some people in the world of analysts and the stock market are saying this creates a degree of circularity. There's vendor financing here, you could create extra systemic risk. For example, companies like OpenAI, which is not profitable, fails to meet the commitments that it's making to buy data centers, mostly full of your chips. Are you concerned that there is a growing structural risk related to all of those things?
Not because of this reason.
For any other reason?
Well, if there are other reasons that we can talk about, but not for this, not for this particular reason. We take every single transaction we do, every single purchase order that we take, we still go back to first principles and we ask ourselves, do you really have the demand for it? Because if you don't have the demand for it, somebody else has the demand. The reason why we invest is several reasons. One is to expand our ecosystem. if you look at the investments that we will likely have made now, and you compare it to the revenues that we're generating, it's in the low single digits. And so that kind of tells you how could low single digits create circularity. And then very importantly, this is the last reason. These are consequential companies, most important companies of our time. We have the opportunity to front row seat. We kind of also have, if you will, inside information about how successful they're doing. And so the opportunity to invest in them, it's going to turn out to be a great investment.
I'd love to move on to talking about the year that you had in the world of politics and policy. The year begins with Trump entering the Oval Office. I understand that your first meeting with him ever was that month, January. And since then, you've traveled the world with him, you've referred to as a close friend and a great leader. And I'm curious, having spent so much time with him up close this year, what's something that you've learned about his approach to AI and the way that
Let's see, I guess maybe I'll say some things that isn't evident watching or reading about President Trump. First of all, he's an extraordinary genius. He's almost I think everything I've ever said to him. He is an incredible employee. His work ethic, he starts as early as anybody else. And oftentimes, we'll be talking about things late in the night, and I'm kind of ready for bed. And he would have gone for several hours. And so I never met anybody with such incredible work ethic. And so it just came from everything that he's done. He's worked hard his whole life. He works 7 days a week, as far as I can tell. There is no, after work, spend time with doing something else. He's just working the whole time. And so these two qualities are really impressive. I wouldn't have against those two qualities. He's excellent listener, he's and he's super smart.
In the time that you spent in and around the Trump administration and traveling the world this year, is there an important moment that you experienced that the world doesn't know about yet?
The world is unaware of how deeply dependent the United States and China are to each other. The ideas that floated around about the United States decoupling from China, I think is flawed. And our dependency on each other is quite significant. And it's deeper than people think. And every single time we press it, we realize what else we're dependent on each other on. This will be the most consequential relationship in the next century. If this is so, I think that we really ought to recognize that managing the relationship and not causing conflict is the most important thing about it. And so negotiations, communications, compromise, and just the continuous process of doing that is essential. I think the current administration has demonstrated incredible wisdom in engaging, whether it's Hexa in the military, whether it's Besson in the Treasury, President Trump himself, the Ambassador Korea, all of them representing us, engaging deeply in conversations that are deeply wise, and I think they'll demonstrate that a century from now, that impactful change versus isolation and avoidance. I think that's important. I think the second thing that I would say that the world didn't realize is how deeply dependent we are in the AI industry on the brilliant students and the brilliant scientists of China. 50% of the world's AI researchers are from China. Their companies in China want China to win. I think that's terrific. And I think the Chinese want China to win. I think that's terrific. We want America to win. And we can have a healthy competition while we compete fairly and collaborate at the same time. But I think taking it emotionally too far from that results in consequences in relationships that are just hard to manage.
You've been still unable to ship. At the beginning of the administration, your H-20 ship to China had argued successfully, ultimately, to the Trump administration for them to remove that export control. However, shortly after that, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said that the goal of American chip policy in that regard was to get China addicted to US chips. And that after that, China turned around and said, actually, no, we don't want the H-20. And since then, you've publicly declared that you have no China revenue. What was your response to Lutnick's comments then?
If you were living with HIV, do chase a dream. Do consider how you stay undetectable. Do learn what's different about Dovato. Dovato is a complete HIV treatment for some people. Do find out how many medicines are in your pill. Most HIV pills contain 3 or 4 medicines. Dovato is as effective with just 2. No other complete HIV pill contains fewer medicines than Dovato.
It is unknown if Dovato is safe and effective if you have HIV and hepatitis B. If you have Hep B, don't stop Dovato without talking to your doctor, as it may get worse or harder to treat. Don't take Dovato if you're allergic to its ingredients or taking Defenilide due to serious or life-threatening side effects. If you have a rash or allergic reaction symptoms, stop Dovato and get medical help right away. Other serious or life-threatening side effects include severe liver problems and lactic acid buildup. If you're female or obese, you may be more at risk. Tell your doctor about your medicines or supplements, medical conditions, liver or kidney problems, pregnancy, breastfeeding, or planned pregnancy.
Do move forward. Do ask your doctor about fewer medicines. Do Dovato.
Well, it's unfortunate. I would say. So first of all, it's really important to understand what AI is. AI is not just a model. What AI is a full stack of reinvention of every single layer of the technology stack. AI is about energy. That's the reason we talk about energy all the time. When President Trump came into office and he was pro-energy growth, if it wasn't because of his posture on energy growth, the United States would have been in a very bad way. We would have had no energy, no incremental energy necessary to grow this incredibly important industry. So his growth posture, his growth energy growth policy is incredible. But we have to win every other layer as well. The next layer is chips. The layer after that is infrastructure, cloud services. The layer after that, large language models or AI models. And of course, very importantly, AI applications. The United States has, if we hope to take advantage of this next industrial revolution, and this will be the largest industrial revolution of all of the industrial revolutions. And so every layer of that stack, we must be determined to win. But if we allow all of the layers to only be as successful as the least successful layer, then the United States will fall behind it. Our belief, and what I've explained, is that in the layer of chips, the single most important thing is to make sure that every single model in the world runs on American tech stack, and that the American tech stack is everywhere in the world, so that American tech stack becomes, if you will, there's a belief that somehow, if we provided American chips to foreign countries, and specifically China, that the Chinese military would be building their military and building airplanes and aircraft carriers using American chips. Well, first of all, they have plenty of their own chips, and their companies are formidable. The idea that China does not have technology industry, we now know, is lunacy. And the idea that China is not able to manufacture it, it suggests somebody is at their head deeply in the sand. The ability for us to engage the China market, compete freely, earn our business, is great for it's great for the American people. It allows us to generate revenues for the United States. And as you know, the country that is most secure, has the mightiest military, is because it's also the wealthiest country. And so we want America to be the wealthiest country so that we can fund the mightiest military. And I think that is our way of contributing to national security.
But this is a tightrope you're walking, right? Because you're saying that's precisely what China wants, is to have its own semiconductor.
I know it. I know it.
So, in a way, it wasn't nothing that it was kind of saying the plan part.
You're exactly right in a lot of ways. We realize that on the one hand, we would like to limit American technology. On the other hand, we would like to participate in their market. And it's exactly the opposite for them. They would like their Chinese companies to have access to the best technology so that different layers of the AI stack can flourish. And it gives, while it gives their local technology companies an opportunity to catch up, they would like to access American technology, but they would also like to dominate the market. And so these two ideas are true in both countries. And so the best answer is to let the system work itself out. I think we need a nuanced answer, nuanced policy where American companies have access to the most advanced technology, American technology. Meanwhile, allowing American companies to participate in the world's second largest market.
Since I spoke with one, President Trump said the US would allow NVIDIA to sell H200 chips to China, but the government collected a 25% cut of the sales. You mentioned decoupling there and how the two superpowers are still very dependent on one another. But in your industry, chip making, which is historically very highly concentrated in Taiwan, there is actually a decoupling going on. This last month, October, the first Blackwell chip rolled off the production line from an Arizona factory. This is a momentous occasion because Taiwan is on the stage.
We're building the most advanced chip in the world here in America.
But doesn't that explicitly cause a decoupling? I mean, China is building its own domestic semiconductor industry. The US is now building its own domestic fabrication of semiconductors. That long-time strategic balance of Taiwan being this place where, it's stuck in the middle almost, too expensive for China to invade because of all these reasons. Is invasion becoming more likely because of this decoupling?
Invasion would, any conflict. I've not heard of the very specific plans, but any conflict should be reduced. So we should play a role in increasing conflict. And I think it's very clear that President Trump is the president of peace and seeks out the peace. With respect to semiconductor manufacturing, I think it's very clear that as the industry grows, having resilience is important. We don't need to decouple. We need to enhance resilience. And so the ability to manufacture in multiple sites, in multiple continents, whether electricity reasons or weather reasons or earthquake reasons, whatever the reasons are,